The massive observation ship descended through the clouds of New Verdun, carrying 12 different alien species who had come to watch humans prepare for war. They called themselves the Galactic Conclave, and they believed they understood every military force in the known universe. They had studied the Kreth, with their armored bodies that could stop plasma fire. They had analyzed the Vorn Collective with their telepathic coordination that allowed millions to fight as one mind. They had observed the Thanari with their venomous claws that could kill with a single scratch. Now they had come to study humanity. And most of them expected to be disappointed. Senior Analyst Vex Doran stood at the front of the observation deck, his gray scales reflecting the dim light of the ship's interior. He was Kalathi, species known throughout the galaxy for their ability to analyze and predict military outcomes with perfect accuracy. His people felt no emotions. They saw only data, patterns, and probabilities. This made them the perfect observers. Vexturin had already reviewed everything the Conclave knew about humans. They were a young species, barely 300 years into space travel. Their technology was functional, but nothing special. Their ships were adequate, but lacked elegance. And their soldiers possessed none of the natural advantages that other species enjoyed. No armor, no claws, no venom, no telepathy. Just soft skin, fragile bones, and an average lifespan that most species considered tragically short. The ship landed on a wide field outside the human military base. Vextorin led the delegation down the boarding ramp and onto the surface of New Verdun. The air was thick and humid, filled with the smell of vegetation and rain. Humans apparently liked to build their colonies on worlds that reminded them of their home planet. A group of human officers waited to greet them. Vextorin noticed immediately that they were smiling. This confused him. Military operations were serious matters. There was no logical reason to smile. A tall human female stepped forward. She wore a simple uniform with symbols on her shoulders that indicated her rank. Her hair was pulled back from her face, and her eyes were a shade of brown that Vextorin found unremarkable. "Welcome to New Verdun," she said. Her voice was warm and friendly. "I am Colonel Sarah Chen. I will be your liaison during the exercise." Vextorin inclined his head in the standard galactic greeting. "I am Senior Analyst Vextorin of the Kalothi Observation Corps. We are here to assess human military capabilities." "Of course," Colonel Chen said, still smiling. "We are happy to have you. Please follow me. I will show you to your quarters and then give you a tour of the base." As they walked, Vextorin observed everything. The base was organized but not impressive. Buildings were arranged in logical patterns, and vehicles moved along designated paths. Human soldiers walked in groups, talking and laughing with each other. Some of them were eating food from small containers as they walked. Others were playing some kind of game that involved throwing a round object back and forth. Observer. Kriltha moved closer to Vextorin. She was a representative of the Vorn Collective, a species that shared one mind across billions of individuals. Her body was insectoid, with multiple limbs and compound eyes that saw in spectrums most species could not imagine. "They appear undisciplined," Kriltha said through her translator. "The collective observes no rigid structure in their behavior," Vextorin agreed. "Their emotional attachments to one another are obvious. They engage in unnecessary physical contact and verbal exchanges that serve no tactical purpose." They watched as two human soldiers embraced each other in greeting. Another group was laughing loudly at something one of them had said. A young soldier was showing pictures to his companions, and they were all making sounds of approval and interest. "This will be a liability in combat," Vextorin noted. "Emotional connections cloud judgment and impair decision-making." Colonel Chen led them to a large building where they would stay during the observation period. The rooms were comfortable but simple. Vextorin did not require comfort, but he appreciated the efficiency of the arrangements. That evening, the delegation gathered in a briefing room to learn about the exercise they would observe. A human general stood at the front of the room. He was older than Colonel Chen, with gray hair and lines on his face that indicated many years of experience. His name was General Marcus Webb. "Thank you all for coming," General Webb said. "Tomorrow, we will conduct a full-scale military exercise. The scenario is a rescue operation. Vextorin felt a ripple of surprise move through the delegation. Rescue operations were considered wasteful by most galactic standards. The logical approach to hostage situations was to calculate acceptable losses and proceed with the most efficient solution, which was usually orbital bombardment of the enemy position. The scenario is this, General Webb continued. A civilian research station has been captured by hostile forces. There are 200 hostages inside. Our mission is to rescue them. A Thanari observer raised one of his clawed hands. Why not simply destroy the enemy position from orbit? The loss of 200 civilians is acceptable compared to the potential military casualties of a ground assault. General Webb looked at the Thanari for a long moment. His expression changed in a way that Vextorin could not interpret. It was not anger exactly, but something close to it. We do not calculate acceptable losses when it comes to our people, the general said. Those 200 civilians are not numbers on a screen. They are mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, friends and loved ones. We will bring them home. The room fell silent. Vextorin recorded the general's words for later analysis. He found them illogical but interesting. After the briefing, the delegation returned to their quarters. Vextorin stood at his window and watched the human base below. Soldiers were still moving about, even in the darkness. Some of them sat together around small fires, talking and sharing drinks. Their laughter drifted up through the night air. Kriltha joined him at the window. The collective has analyzed their behavior patterns. They form bonds with each other that serve no strategic purpose. They waste energy on emotional exchanges. They prioritize individuals over the group. All of this is true, Vextorin agreed, and yet they have survived. They have expanded across dozens of star systems. They have never lost a war. Perhaps they have simply never faced a serious opponent, Kriltha suggested. Vextorin considered this possibility. It was the most logical explanation. Humans had been lucky. They had avoided conflicts with the major powers of the galaxy. Their reputation as fierce warriors was probably exaggerated, based on primitive conflicts on their home world before they achieved space travel. Tomorrow would reveal the truth. Tomorrow, they would see humans prepare for battle, and the galaxy would finally have accurate data on their military capabilities. Vextorin began composing his initial report. He wrote carefully, choosing each word with precision. Initial assessment. Human military forces appear disorganized and emotionally compromised. Soldiers display excessive attachment to one another and engage in behavior that serves no tactical purpose. Their refusal to accept acceptable casualties suggests a fundamental misunderstanding of military strategy. Prediction. Human forces will perform below galactic standards. Their emotional weakness will prove to be a significant tactical liability. He saved the report and prepared for sleep. Tomorrow would be an interesting day. He expected to be proven right about everything. He had never been more wrong about anything in his entire life. Watching humans march into battle of the galaxy finally understood their fearsome reputation. Part 2. The morning sun rose over New Verdun, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Vextorin had been awake for hours, reviewing data and preparing his observation equipment. He was determined to record every detail of the human military exercise with perfect accuracy. The delegation gathered on a raised platform overlooking the staging area. Below them, thousands of human soldiers were assembling in neat rows. Their uniforms were simple and practical, designed for function rather than appearance. Each soldier carried weapons and equipment that Vextorin recognized as standard across most galactic militaries. Colonel Chen joined them on the platform. She looked different today. Her expression was serious, and there was a tension in her body that had not been there before. The briefing will begin soon, she said. The commanders are addressing the troops now. Vextorin activated his recording devices and focused on the scene below. A group of officers stood on a platform facing the assembled soldiers. General Webb was among them, along with several other high-ranking humans. The general began to speak. His voice was amplified so that every soldier could hear him clearly. Today we face a mission that tests everything we believe in, General Webb said. 200 of our people are being held by enemy forces. They are scared. They are waiting for us, and we will not let them down. Vextorin noticed something strange happening among the soldiers. They were leaning forward, listening with intense focus. Some of them were nodding. Others had expressions that the Kellethy analyst could not interpret. "I want to tell you about some of the people we are going to save today," the general continued. A large screen behind him lit up with images. "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez. She is a biologist who left her family on Earth to study alien plant life. She has a daughter named Maria who is waiting for her mother to come home." The image changed. "This is Thomas Park. He is an engineer who volunteered for this posting because he believed in the mission of discovery. His husband sends him a message every day." Another image. "This is Amara Okafor. She is 22 years old. This was her first assignment away from home. Her parents are watching our exercise today, praying that we succeed." Vextorin found this approach completely illogical. Why would commanders waste valuable briefing time showing pictures and sharing personal stories? What tactical advantage could possibly come from making soldiers emotionally before combat? But he could not deny what he was seeing. The soldiers below were transformed. Their faces showed determination that went beyond simple duty. They were not just listening. They were connecting. "These are our people," General Webb said, his voice rising. "Every single person in that station is someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend, and we are going to bring them home. Every last one of them," soldiers roared. It was not a cheer or a shout. It was something deeper, something primal. The sound rose from thousands of throats and filled the air with a vibration that Vextorin felt in his bones. Kriltha moved closer to him. "The collective is experiencing something unusual. We feel ... disturbed. We cannot explain why." "I am recording everything," Vextorin said. "We will analyze it later." The soldiers began to organize into marching formations. Officers moved among them, checking equipment and giving final instructions. The process was efficient but not rushed. Every soldier knew their role and their position. Then the drums began. Vextorin had read about human drums in his research, but he had not understood their purpose. Now he felt their power. Deep, rhythmic beats echoed across the staging area. The sound was simple, but overwhelming. It created a pulse that seemed to synchronize everything around it. The soldiers began to march. Their boots struck the ground in perfect unison, matching the rhythm of the drums. The sound of thousands of feet hitting the earth at exactly the same moment was like thunder. Vextorin watched in fascination as the humans moved as one, their bodies aligned, their steps identical. Then they began to sing. It started with a single voice, strong and clear. Other voices joined, building in power until the entire formation was singing together. The song was in an ancient human language that Vextorin did not understand, but the meaning was clear in the melody and the emotion. The song spoke of sacrifice, of courage, of love for those who fight beside you, of the willingness to die so that others might live. Kriltha suddenly grabbed Vextorin's arm. Her compound eyes were wide, and her translator struggled to convey her distress. The collective. "We are feeling something we have never felt before. Billions of us, across 1,000 worlds, are all experiencing the same sensation. We are ... afraid." "Afraid?" Vextorin repeated. "Of what?" "Of them," Kriltha whispered, pointing at the marching humans. "Of what they are capable of." Vextorin looked down at the human soldiers. They were still marching, still singing. Their faces showed no fear. Instead, he saw something that made his analytical mind struggle to find the right word. Eagerness. They were eager to fight. They wanted to go into battle. They were not being forced or ordered. They were choosing to march toward danger because they believed in what they were fighting for. A Thanari observer spoke from behind them. "I have watched the Kreth go to war. I have seen the Vorn Collective mobilize their billions. I have observed the most fearsome militaries in the galaxy, but I have never seen anything like this." The human column moved across the landscape like a great wave. Their song echoed off the hills and filled the valley. The drums continued their relentless beat, driving the soldiers forward with unstoppable momentum. Vextorin tried to maintain his analytical detachment. but he found it increasingly difficult. There was something about the sight and sound of humans marching together that affected him on a level he could not explain. "They are not fighting for territory," he said quietly. "They are not fighting for resources or power. They are fighting for each other. Is that not a weakness?" Kriltha asked. Emotional attachment should impair their judgment. Watched as a young human soldier helped an older one adjust his equipment without breaking stride. He saw two soldiers exchange a look of complete trust and understanding. He noticed how they moved together, covering each other, protecting each other. "Perhaps we have misunderstood," Vexteron said slowly. "Perhaps emotional attachment is not their weakness. Perhaps it is their strength." The column continued its march toward the simulated enemy position. The singing grew louder as they approached. The drums beat faster. The soldiers moved with perfect unity. Thousands of individuals acting as one. Colonel Chen stood beside the observers, watching her people march. There were tears in her eyes, but she was smiling. "This is what you came to see," she said. "This is why humans have never lost a war. We do not fight because we have to. We fight because we love. And there is no force in the galaxy that can stand against that." Vextoran said nothing. He simply watched and recorded. Knowing that everything he thought he understood about humanity was wrong, the battle was about to begin. And the galaxy was about to learn what humans were truly capable of. Watching humans march into battle, the galaxy finally understood their fearsome reputation. Part 3. The simulated battle began with an explosion of activity that took every observer by surprise. Vexteron had studied hundreds of military engagements across the galaxy. He knew how proper armies fought. They advanced carefully, preserved their forces, and withdrew when casualties became too high. Logic and mathematics guided every decision. The humans threw all of that away. The first wave of soldiers hit the simulated enemy position like a storm. They did not advance cautiously. They did not preserve themselves. They attacked with a ferocity that made Vextorn's recording equipment struggle to capture every detail. "They are moving too fast," a Kreth observer noted. "They should be taking cover and advancing slowly." The humans were not interested in safety. They were interested in reaching the hostages as quickly as possible. Every second mattered. Every moment of delay meant more suffering for the people they'd come to save. Vextoran watched as a squad of soldiers breached the outer perimeter of the enemy base. They moved in perfect coordination, each soldier knowing exactly where their companions would be at every moment. When one soldier kicked open a door, the others were already flowing through it, weapons ready. "Their communication is remarkable," Kriltha observed, "but they are not using telepathy. How do they coordinate so precisely?" Colonel Chen answered without looking away from the battle. "Training, trust, years of working together, eating together, living together. They know each other better than they know themselves." The simulation was designed to be realistic. Enemy combatants appeared on screens and through holographic projections, firing simulated weapons that registered hits on the soldiers' equipment. When a soldier was hit, their suit would lock up, signaling that they were wounded or killed in the exercise. The first human casualty occurred within minutes of the breach. A young sergeant took a simulated hit to his chest. His suit locked, and he fell to the ground, officially dead in the exercise. Vexteron expected the other soldiers to step over their fallen comrade and continue the mission. That was standard protocol in every military he had studied. The mission was more important than any individual. Instead, two soldiers immediately moved to the fallen sergeant. They grabbed his arms and dragged him to cover even though he was already marked as dead. "What are they doing?" a Thenari observer demanded. "He is eliminated. They are wasting valuable time and exposing themselves to danger." Colonel Chen's voice was quiet but firm. "They are not leaving him behind. We never leave our people behind, not even in training, not even in simulation." The battle continued with increasing intensity. Human soldiers pushed deeper into the enemy base, fighting through corridors and rooms with desperate determination. Casualties mounted on both sides, but the humans never slowed down. Vexteran focused his attention on a particular squad led by a tall woman with short dark hair. Her name was Lieutenant Commander Yuki Tanaka, according to the identification systems. She moved with confidence and skill, directing her soldiers through the chaos of combat. Then a simulated explosion took out 3 of her squad members, including her second-in-command. The man had been beside her for the entire assault. Vextorin had observed them talking and laughing together before the exercise began. He expected Lieutenant Commander Tanaka to freeze or retreat. The loss of close companions should have impaired her judgment. Instead, she screamed. It was not a scream of fear or despair. It was a scream of fury. She called out her fallen friend's name and rallied her remaining soldiers with a voice that cut through the noise of battle. Her words were simple but powerful. For Jackson. For all of them. Push forward. Her soldiers responded with roars of their own. They charged into the enemy fire with complete disregard for their own safety. The simulated enemy positions were overwhelmed in seconds. The fury of the human assault was simply too much to withstand. Vextorin paused his recording and turned to Kriltha. I do not understand. The loss of their companion should have weakened them. Instead, it made them stronger. The collective is experiencing significant distress, Kriltha replied. We are having difficulty processing what we are observing. Humans appear to draw strength from their emotional bonds rather than being weakened by them. The battle continued to unfold across the base. Human soldiers moved through the structure with terrifying efficiency. They cleared rooms, secured corridors, and pushed ever closer to where the simulated hostages were being held. Vextorin decided to learn more. He activated a communication channel to the surface and requested an interview with one of the human soldiers. To his surprise, the request was granted. A sergeant named Marcus Rodriguez was brought to a temporary rest area where the observers could speak with him. Rodriguez was a middle-aged man with weathered skin and calm eyes. He had simulated blood on his uniform from where he had helped drag wounded comrades to safety. He did not seem tired or stressed. He seemed focused. Sergeant Rodriguez, Vextorin began, I have a question that I hope you can answer. Your approach to combat appears reckless by galactic standards. You take unnecessary risks. You expose yourselves to danger for fallen comrades who cannot be saved. Why? Rodriguez looked at the Kelethi analyst for a long moment. Then he smiled, though it was not a happy smile. Those people in there are our people, he said. Maybe we have never met them. Maybe we do not know their names. But they are human. They are family, and we do not abandon family. But the cost? Vextorin pressed. Your casualties are significant. Is it worth losing so many soldiers to save 200 civilians? Rodriguez leaned forward. His eyes were intense, and his voice dropped to a low growl. Let me tell you something about humans. We are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We are not the fastest or the toughest. We do not have claws or armor or telepathy, but we have something that no other species seems to understand. What is that? Vextorin asked. Love, Rodriguez said simply. We love each other. We love our families, our friends, our fellow humans, and there is nothing we will not do for the people we love. We will march through fire. We will fight against impossible odds. We will die if we have to, because that is what love means to us. The sergeant stood up and adjusted his equipment. The battle was calling him back. You want to know why humans have never lost a war? He said. It is because we are not fighting for victory. We are fighting for each other. And that makes us unstoppable. He walked away, returning to the battle. Vextorin watched him go, feeling something that the Kelethi had never experienced before. He felt humbled. The observers continued to watch as the human forces breached the final barriers and approached the hostage location. The fury of their assault had not diminished. If anything, it had grown stronger as they got closer to their goal. They were going to succeed. Vextorin was certain of it now. Nothing could stop them. Nothing could stand against the power of their determination and love. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson it would never forget, watching humans march into battle. The galaxy finally understood. Their fearsome reputation part for the rescue was complete. Every single hostage had been secured and brought to safety. The human soldiers had fought through overwhelming simulated opposition and achieved their objective with absolute determination. But the victory had come at a price. Vextorin reviewed the casualty reports with growing disbelief. The human forces had suffered a 32% casualty rate. By galactic standards, this was catastrophic. Any military that lost nearly a third of its soldiers in a single operation would be considered broken. Commanders would face tribunals. Strategies would be abandoned. But the humans did not seem broken. They seemed proud. The observers gathered on the platform overlooking the staging area where the exercise had begun. Below them, the human soldiers were reassembling. Those who had been marked as casualties in the simulation had been released from their locked suits and were now standing with their companions. General Webb addressed the troops once more. His voice was different now. It was softer, more personal. "Today we proved what we already knew," he said. "We proved that no distance is too far and no price is too high when it comes to bringing our people home. You fought with courage, you fought with honor, and you fought with love." Vextorin noticed that many of the soldiers were crying. This confused him at first. Crying was typically associated with sadness or pain, but these humans were smiling through their tears. They were holding each other. They were celebrating. "I want to take a moment to honor those who fell today," General Webb continued. "Even in simulation, we remember. Even in training, we grieve. Because every time we practice losing our brothers and sisters, we remind ourselves of what we are truly fighting for." The drums began again, but this time they were slow and solemn. The rhythm was like a heartbeat, steady and mournful. The soldiers stood in formation, their heads bowed. Names began to scroll on the large screen behind General Webb. These were the names of soldiers who had been marked as casualties in the exercise. Each name was displayed for several seconds before the next one appeared. For each name, a voice called out from the formation. Sometimes it was a single voice. Sometimes it was many voices together. They shared stories. They shared memories. They shared love. Private First Class Emily Chen. She was the fastest runner in the company. She always shared her food with everyone. Sergeant Major Thomas Williams. He told terrible jokes, but we laughed anyway. He was the best trainer any of us ever had. Lieutenant Sarah Park. She wrote letters to her parents every week. She never missed a single one. Vextorin watched this ceremony with growing amazement. The humans were honoring soldiers who were standing right there among them. Soldiers who were very much alive and had simply been tagged as casualties in a training exercise. He approached Colonel Chen, who was standing at the edge of the platform with tears streaming down her face. "I do not understand," Vextorin said. "These soldiers are not actually dead. Why do you mourn for them?" Colonel Chen wiped her eyes and looked at him. "Because one day, some of them will be. And when that day comes, we will be ready to remember them. We practice our grief just as we practice our combat, because both are part of who we are." "But does this not weaken you?" Vextorin asked. "Does confronting the possibility of loss not make you afraid to fight?" "It does the opposite," Colonel Chen replied. "Every time we stand here and hear these names, we are reminded of why we fight. We fight so that this ceremony will never be real. We fight so that we can bring everyone home. And if we cannot bring everyone home, we fight so that their sacrifice will mean something." The ceremony continued for over an hour. Every single casualty was honored. Every story was told. The sun began to set over New Verdun, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. When the last name was read, the drums fell silent. General Webb stood before his soldiers one final time. "I want to address our visitors from the Galactic Conclave," he said, looking up at the platform where the observers stood. "You came here to evaluate our military capabilities. You came to calculate our strength and weaknesses. You came to determine if humans are worthy allies or easy targets." Vextorin felt uncomfortable under the general's gaze. There was something in the man's eyes that made even the emotionless Calathi want to look away. "I hope you found what you were looking for," General Webb continued. "But let me tell you something that your reports will never capture. You cannot measure what makes us strong. You cannot calculate the value of love or quantify the power of sacrifice. You can count our ships and weapons. You can analyze our tactics and strategies. But you will never understand what truly makes us dangerous." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We are not afraid to die," the general said. "We are afraid of failing the people we love. And there is no force in this galaxy that can make us abandon them. Not threat, not pain, not death itself." The soldiers raised their fists to the sky in a unified salute. Their voices rose together in a single word that echoed across the staging area: together. Vexter turned to Kriltha. The Vorn representative was trembling, her compound eyes reflecting the fading light of the sun. "The collective has reached a consensus," she said. "Humanity must never become our enemy. We must ensure that they remain our allies no matter the cost. Because if they ever march against us, we will not survive." Other observers were having similar conversations. The Kreth ambassador was speaking urgently into a communication device. The Thanari representatives were huddled together, their normally aggressive postures replaced by something that looked almost like fear. Vextorin began composing a new report in his mind. It would be very different from the one he had started the day before. He had come to New Verdun expecting to find weakness. Instead, he had found something terrifying. He had found a species that loved without limit. A species that sacrificed without hesitation. A species that would cross the galaxy and burn worlds to protect the people they cared about. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that the Galactic Conclave would never look at humanity the same way again. Watching humans march into battle, the galaxy finally understood their fearsome reputation. Part 5. The great chamber of the Galactic Conclave had never been so quiet. Representatives from over 200 species filled the massive circular room, their attention focused on the central platform where Vextorin stood. The Kelethi analyst had returned from New Verdun 3 days ago, and his report had been classified at the highest level until this moment. Now, the galaxy would learn the truth about humanity. Vextorin activated the holographic display system. Images from New Verdun filled the chamber, showing the human soldiers assembling for their exercise. The representatives watched in silence as the briefing began, as photographs of hostages were displayed. As the humans were told the names and stories of the people they were going to save, "What you are seeing," Vextorin explained, "is the beginning of a standard human military operation. Note how the commanders do not discuss tactical advantages or strategic objectives. Instead, they make the mission personal. They connect their soldiers emotionally to the people they are trying to rescue." A Kreth ambassador raised one of his armored limbs. "Is this not a waste of valuable briefing time? What tactical advantage does emotional connection provide?" "That was my initial assessment as well," Vextorin replied. "I was wrong." He changed the display to show the march. The sound of drums filled the chamber, and the representatives watched as thousands of humans moved in perfect synchronization. When the singing began, a visible ripple of discomfort passed through the audience. "Many of you are feeling something unusual right now," Vextorin said. "The Vorn Collective has reported that their entire species experienced simultaneous distress when first exposed to this recording. The Thanari have reported similar reactions. Even my own people, who pride ourselves on emotional detachment, found this difficult to observe." The recording continued, showing the battle itself. The chamber watched as humans charged into simulated fire without hesitation. They saw soldiers drag their fallen comrades to safety, even those already marked as casualties. They witnessed Lieutenant Commander Tanaka's scream of fury and her squad's devastating response. Vextorin paused the recording on an image of Sergeant Rodriguez, the soldier he had interviewed during the battle. "I asked this human why his species fights the way it does," Vextorin said. "His answer has fundamentally changed my understanding of military analysis. He told me that humans do not fight for victory. They do not fight for territory or resources or power. They fight for love." The chamber erupted in confused murmuring. Love was a concept that many species understood, but none of them associated it with military operations. "I know this sounds illogical," Vextorin continued. "I found it illogical as well. But the evidence is undeniable. Human military effectiveness does not come from superior technology or natural advantages. It comes from emotional bonds that we have consistently misidentified as weaknesses." He showed the recording of the memorial ceremony. The representatives watched as humans wept for comrades who were standing beside them, honoring the fallen in a simulation as if the losses were real. They practice grief, Vextorn explained. They train themselves to mourn so that they never forget what they are fighting for. And in doing so, they create soldiers who are willing to give everything. Not because they are ordered to, but because they choose to. The recording ended with General Webb's final words to the observers. The chamber heard his warning about the unmeasurable nature of human strength. They saw the soldiers raise their fists and shout together. When the lights came up, the chamber remained silent. Finally, the Grand Arbiter of the Conclave spoke. She was ancient, her species one of the oldest in the galaxy, and her voice carried the weight of countless centuries. Senior Analyst Vextorin, what are your recommendations based on this assessment? Vextorin took a deep breath. The words he was about to speak would reshape galactic politics for generations. My recommendations are as follows. First, humanity must never be made our enemy. Any species that threatens human lives should expect a response that defies logical analysis. Humans will cross galaxies, sacrifice armies, and endure any hardship to protect the people they love. There is no cost they will not pay. He paused, looking around the chamber at the hundreds of representatives who were hanging on his every word. We must understand that human friendship is equally powerful. They extend the same loyalty to their allies that they show to their own kind. Any species that earns humanity's trust will gain protectors who will never abandon them. And third, Vextorn concluded, we must update our strategic archives. I propose adding a new warning to our records. A warning that should be shared with every species in the galaxy. What warning? The Grand Arbiter, Vextorn, straightened his posture and spoke in a voice that carried to every corner of the chamber. Never give humanity a reason to march. Because when humans march together, singing the songs of their ancestors, moving with unified purpose toward those they love, nothing in this universe can stop them. Not distance, not danger, not death itself. They will find a way. They always find a way. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, representatives began to signal their agreement. The warning would be recorded. The archives would be updated. And the galaxy would finally understand what humans truly were. They were not the strongest species. They were not the most advanced or the most numerous. But they were bound together by something that no other species had fully developed. They were bound by love, by loyalty, by the unshakable belief that every life mattered and no one should be left behind. Vextorn left the chamber, knowing that he had witnessed something historic. He had watched humans march into battle, and in doing so, he had learned the answer to a question that the galaxy has been asking since humanity first reached the stars. Why were humans so fearsome? The answer was simple. Humans were fearsome because they loved without limit. They sacrificed without hesitation. They stood together in the face of impossible odds and refused to break. They were not gods or monsters. They were something far more dangerous. They were family, and the galaxy had finally understood. Anyone who threatened that family would face the full fury of a species that would never stop, never surrender, and never leave their people behind. The stars themselves trembled at the thought. From that day forward, the warning spread across every world and every station. It became part of galactic law, taught to every child, whispered in every council meeting. Never make humanity march, because when they did, the universe itself held its breath.